Anamander Rake looked tiny against the backdrop of his edifice, almost insubstantial at this distance. The illusion was about to be shattered. She gasped as the aura of his power bloomed outward to see it at such a distance.
Channel your warring! No!
All right, grab your damn books. Caldor, get the lights. Malazan is a grand and complex series. It is a world where magic isn't just an explosion of power, it's a conflagration. Civilizations are born and destroyed, flooded under layers of sand and ice. Battles aren't just fought, they are witnessed. A haunting shadow for the foot soldiers that fight for the Empire. Demigods roam the planet, decimating everything in their wake. Malazan isn't just a story. I wouldn't even call it a book. It's a damn tome! A series of tomes that Steven Erikson found in a hood-damn desert. These tomes are a mere glimpse to a fully realized world where every nook and cranny has a story. An archaeologist and anthropologist would probably have a weird fascination for things like culture and historical lost civilizations. Knowledge. The series is a challenging read because it isn't a story that is told, it is a world that is learned. It's discovered, much like our world. One does not simply read Malazan, you ascend, pun intended, then transcend into understanding.
Then transformation. It is fascinating, really.
From studying, you will become a part of the world. Now grab your books and sit down for a second. These videos will be split between the different acts of each book. By no means will this be a one-for-one retelling of the books. I believe that would be doing the books a disservice. These videos are to be seen as a companion. They are to be seen before or after reading the passage without going into too much detail of what's happening. The goal here is to explain and analyze concepts that may be confusing, but capitalizing on when and how they are revealed to the reader. I will be basing the information off things the characters may already know, and listen closely because this is what's important. I will not explain what is unknown. Oh yeah. This ain't your daddy's video, I'm not gonna hold your hand. Caldor, start the narration!
Now, however, Perron walked among them without the family guards. The power of blood was gone, and all he possessed by way of armor was the uniform he now wore. Not a craftsman, not a hawker, not a merchant, but a soldier, a weapon of the Empire. And the Empire had those in the tens of thousands.
And of course, we begin with the furious Malazan Empire. Its border spans across Quantali, the subcontinent known as Falar, the Seven Cities, and more recently, the coast of North Guinabakis. It originated on an island off the coast of the Quantali continent, Malaz Island. However, the capital is now placed in Unta, located on the northeast coast of Quantali. The founder is a man named Emperor Kellenved. It is not important to ponder on such a man. In the book, not much is explained about him. As the Emperor, he commanded loyalty. He sometimes hoarded knowledge without writing much down. He had a cohort, mysteriously named Dancer. But what matters is that both were assassinated in a vicious coup d'etat led by the current and present Empress, Surly, now known as Empress Lacine. Cold, humorless. Having a conversation with her can be rather terrifying. Don't tell her I said that. The word Lacine is actually from Nippon. It means throne master. Yes, it is void of subtlety. Ah, yes, I recall that time. I was hired to solve a problem in a place called the Mouse Quarters in Malaz City. I well remember that night. The blood, the screams. Yes, well, moving on. Commanders of the Empire are known as the High Fists, a dominant name that brought fear to the Empire's enemies. These fists weren't just specific to battle. They could be hired to govern cities if they were needed. Second in command, the vice president or regent hand of the king, if you will, is known as the adjunct. If the high fist represents the fists of the Empress, then the adjunct would be both arms, pumped with a steroid called an Altataral sword. Altataral is a powerful magic deafening ore. It's essentially the Valyrian steel of Malazan.
Talk took a step forward. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He'd been about to tell Tattersall that Lauren carried an Altataral sword, that the duel would be grossly unfair, that she'd die within seconds, as the sword devoured her every spell.
As far as we know, the adjunct is the only one that's able to wield it. Can anyone else hold it? Hood knows. The thing is like a damned lightsaber. The ore stops any mage in their tracks. It's our kryptonite, our orange soda, our pornography during No Nut November. The current adjunct is named Lorne. You stay away from her. The Empress also has an elite group of spies, known as the Claw. Recruited at a very young age and forced through rigorous training. These elite soldiers are feared amongst even the Malazan military, capable of espionage like none other, capable of ending wars, becoming a teacher, capable of mastering all kinds of weapons. Or maybe not. Assassinations were often blamed on the Claw if nobody had a sure answer on the culprit. They are rumored to have access to a secret warren known as the Imperial Warren, a portal that allows them to cross vast distances in a few hours. But of course, that's merely a rumor. When it comes to the Claw, make sure to always watch your back. If you think a Claw's involved, you're probably already a dead man. Sappers are our military engineers. They build bridges, mines, explosives, known to clear the way for the soldiers. They would also repair roads or equipment if needed. They're also out of their damn minds. Never let a sapper near equipment that will explode if combined. A cadre mage are groups of mages that fight for the Empire. They are led by a man named Tay Shren, the top dog Imperial High Mage. I have a bitter history with this Tay Shren. He'll do anything to ensure that the Empire stays powerful. A man that truly believes that the ends justify the means. Once the Empire had conquered a nation, they needed to maintain it. They would take advantage of customs to persuade. They would utilize religion, much like Asimov's Foundation or Herbert's Bene Gesserit. That's a ridiculous name. But let's be honest, we have our fair share of weird names. But it is also known for wiping out the nobility to win the favor of the majority, or the poor, if you will. The nobility are about to be cold.
Dujek said at her side.
Tay Shren wants it to be thorough and public.
Empire policy, Lauren replied stiffly. You're well aware of that, High Fist.
But that's not to say that all nobility is cold. You could get lucky or gain favor for the Empire. A noble already living within the Empire's grasp could survive, like the family of Gnos Paran, one of the main characters of Gardens of the Moon. You may notice I'm showing you a picture of Dev Patel from The Green Knight. Well, that's just always how I pictured Paran anyways, so. At this moment, it is not important to differentiate a god and an ascendant. They are almost one and the same. The only possible difference at the moment is that gods can obtain power through worshippers. For example, due to the heavy losses of war, Hood, the god of death, is arguably one of the most powerful gods. It is said that Hood's gates is stitched together by some of his cult followers as they moan in eternal agony. But, of course, this too is merely a rumor. Another god is named Upon, the twin gods of chance. The Lady and the Lord are a mischievous duo known to toy with the lives of mortals. In doing so, they would also place the plans of other Ascendants into jeopardy. For example, if a mortal were to fight an Ascendant in a normal situation, it would have been, well, one-sided, an uphill battle. But with the Upon's influence, one could turn the tide against the god. With the spinning of a coin, a one-sided affair could transform to a battle even an Ascendant would fear.
The trouble with Ascendants is that they try to rig every game. Of course, we delight in uncertainty.
It is easy to imagine the idea of sheer luck having many followers. Gnos Paran, one of the main characters named his sword upon. But this is just me rambling about insignificant information. An Ascendant usually used to be mortal, then transcended death. Lucky bastards. They are to be seen as demigods. For example, Kratos from the God of War series. He can be seen normally walking amongst the mortals, but with the power of a god. An Ascendant could actually become a god if they gained enough followers. But again, what matters at the moment is that an Ascendant and God are basically interchangeable. The difference between them is more of an idealistic one. Because certain Ascendants don't have worshippers, they aren't quite seen as gods. The most recent Ascendants are named Shadowthrone and Cotilion. Another name for them would be Amanas, or the Roop. Two Ascendants that appeared not too long ago. Shrouded in black hoods with hounds as big as horses! They are the keepers of the Warren of Shadow, known as Minas. Not much is known about these mysterious beings, but this leads me to my next portion. Each Ascendant and God is part of what's called a house. It's easiest to see these as a way to sort and organize the gods. This organization is called upon with a deck of cards called the Deck of Dragons, or the Fatigued. Much like fortune-telling cards, these are used by mages for hints as to what gods and Ascendants may be doing at the moment. Or rather, in the near future. If a mage were to play with the Deck of Dragons, he or she may, for example, draw the King of House Death, meaning Hood, also known as the God of Death, may be up to something, either in the material plane or within his warren. Maybe a war is starting soon, or perhaps a cataclysmic natural disaster. After the first draw, he or she draws the Queen of House Life. Maybe after the cataclysmic event, the world will be granted with years of peace. But, of course, this is a sad generalization of the deck. I admit I am ignorant of how to play the game. Usually, only mages are able to properly read these decks and obtain information from them. This was one of the hardest things for me to grasp as a young lad. In the world of Malazan, warrens are a means of tapping into magic, but they can also be used as portals to different planes of existence. For example, Minas, the sad sack of all warrens, is also known as the Warren of Illusion. If you were to learn the teachings of Minas, you could attempt to fool a person by creating a vision or sound that isn't there. Or perhaps create imaginary bunnies at your niece's birthday party. But the Warren of Shadow can be stepped into. It's a physical plane and seen with the naked eye. There are many different warrens, but each with their own different kind of power. The Warren of Danul, used by a soldier named Mallet. It's known as the Healing and Restoration Warren. Is that also a physical plane? Who knows? These questions are not answered within the first book, so don't worry about it. Magic in our world isn't just isolated to warrens. There are many old magics, tribes like the Simk, obtaining power from old Ascendants. Some mages have the ability to move souls into objects, or rather another being. I've actually experienced this phenomenon. I still feel the bastard. Just imagine two souls possessing one person. A serious and confusing business. But you see, our use of the warrens is just the tip of the iceberg. They are merely branches of elder warrens. Oh yeah. Out of all the warrens, there's nothing like the elder warrens. I will briefly teach about them. Kurald Galain. It's the Tisti Andi Warren of Darkness. Kurald Galain is used by a race known as the Tisti Andi. Skin as dark as a drow, hair usually long, black as coals or as white as snow. The Tisti Andi are a formidable foe. I did not mean to rhyme. They are led by an Ascendant, Anamanda Rake. A proper Geralt of Rivia mixed with Sephiroth. He commands from a great floating city named Moonspawn. Due to its suspension, it is known as being famously impregnable. Well, he can impregnate me. Moonspawn is so large, it's believed that great ravens as big as horses are said to be nestled within its crags. As far as we know, nobody that isn't Tistiandi has stepped foot into Moonspawn. Its inner contents are a mystery. As of recently, it's been seen floating around Guinebacus. If it joins the fray, then Denul help us all. Talon, the Talon-Imas Warren. The Talon-Imas are my personal favorite of the races. They are undead ancient warriors. Once one of the 4 ancient founding races of the world, they were brought back to life by Emperor Kalinvad. If a Talon-Imas speaks, you listen! I must say, every word that magically comes out of those horrifying, hollow, dark skulls is important, calculated. But I do not need to ponder on them for Act 1 of Gardens of the Moon. Omtos Falak, the Jagut Warren. Omtos Falak is used by another one of the founding races, known as the Jagut. Physically, a Jagut is reminiscent of an Orsimer from the Elder Scrolls, but these powerful people are not to be judged by their looks. There are Jaguts with much wisdom, like the famed Gothos, writer of Gothos' Folly, a book full of information that many historians study till this day. A friend of mine told me it's rather a dull affair. And finally, Starvold de Mullane, the Tiam Warren, the first Warren. Not much is known about this one, but it is said to be the parent of all Warrens. But when it comes to using Warrens, be warned! Using a Warren can be dangerous at times. If you are trying to be secretive, you may end up unveiling your location by simply tapping into one. At desperate times, you may need to go into the Warren of Chaos, the path between all Warrens. I am very familiar with the Warren of Chaos. How else would I know what a lightsaber is? At this moment, we are at war. The Empire is done claiming the 7 cities and has decided to stretch its arms to embrace the continent known as Guinebacus. The Bridge Burners are at it again. The Bridge Burners. They were considered to be Emperor Kalinved's elite soldiers, perhaps his favorite. They are known for their heroic actions during the conquest of the 7 cities. None of the Empire's military is more respected than a Bridge Burner. However, since Lacine's takeover, they have been passively shafted aside, thrown into what the other soldiers call suicide missions by the Empress. They are led by a man named Whiskey Jack. Remember what I said about weird names. The Empire has made a pact with a race of people called the Marath. These insect humanoids speak with clicks and buzzes. They have chitin-type armor and fly dragonflies as big as horses. They call them Quarrel and are used for expedient transportation. It seems we have garnered a truce with the Moranth. They will provide support and explosives. Our sappers call them Moranth munitions. The strength of these things may be greatly exaggerated, but class is nearing its end. I have provided the tools needed to understand the first act of the book. If you've made it this far into the video, then perhaps you have what it takes. I believe in your abilities. What will happen in Guinebacus? Will the Bridge Burners survive their orders? What part does a pawn or Amanas have to play in this war? Will the Empress promote me for being the best damn teacher in Quantali? Maybe not, because I didn't tell you everything. I've just given you a crumb to an exciting world, filled with magic, diversity, war, self-identity, compassion, and culture. If you are a fan of Game of Thrones, then remember everyone is expendable, even gods. I implore you, go out and buy the books. Read, learn, and get out of my classroom.